This is the entrance to the cemetery. Some rules and regulations. It says Cottondale 1885. Cottondale Cemetery. Here's a place where they list everyone who's in the cemetery. And they have a plaque here about Machine Gun Kelly. During the Prohibition era, organized crime increased. Big name gangsters like Al Capone ruled the streets, while public enemies such as Bonnie and Clyde swept across the country. One of the most infamous criminals of this time was George Francis Barnes Jr., also known as George B. Machine Gun Kelly, born on July 17, 1900 in Chicago. Barnes grew up in Memphis. He briefly held a job and family, but following divorce and the loss of his job, he fell into bootlegging. He built up a nasty reputation, being jailed numerous times, and then he headed westward by the late 1920s. In 1930, he met the widow Catherine Thorne. They eventually married and joined together to go on crime sprees of higher and higher magnitudes, robbing banks across the South and the Midwest. Catherine was known to be a good shot with various firearms and eventually bought a Thompson machine gun for her husband, earning him his nickname. This is part of the cemetery, and there's farms all across the area. There's a farmhouse, barn. George and Catherine robbed banks for years, gaining large amounts of money and notoriety. On July 22, 1933, the couple set out to kidnap Charles Urschel, an oil baron in Oklahoma City. They held him at the farmhouse of Catherine's stepfather, Robert Boss Shannon, in Wise County until the ransom of $200,000 was paid. However, in August, the couple was caught and arrested. During one of the first court cases under the new Lindbergh law of kidnapping, George, Catherine, and much of the Shannon family were given life sentences in prison. Although Boss was granted clemency after 11 years, George died of heart disease in Leavenworth Prison on July 18, 1954. George Barnes was buried here by Boss Shannon, as nobody but George's immediate family claimed the body. Cottondale is the area's oldest settlement, platted by landowner B.F. Banks, who also gave lots for public use, named 1875 for lush growth of cotton planted by John Bridges, blacksmith, to finance a trip to Alabama to bring back his bride. Paradise took over town's post office 1912 and the school 1933. This looks like an area where you can have lunch or have meals. This is the Cottondale Community Chapel. And they have a little building here, which may have been an outhouse. This is the Cottondale Community Chapel. And it says here that it's the former site of Cottondale School. And we can see the cemetery, which is right next to these old buildings. And this is the Cottondale School, 1919. Here's the side of the building. Got a few benches out here. Looking for row 11. And we find the grave of George Kelly. This is a mugshot of George B. Kelly. And this is the original headstone, George B. Kelly, 1954. And this is Boss Shannon at the funeral. Row 11. George B. Kelly. And he's next to Herbison. And here right down the row is Robert G. Boss Shannon. November 12th, 1877 to December 25th, 1956. And Maud Jackson, 1923. Has some flowers. are some of the other monuments and crosses. And we're back to George Kelly. Several coins, a lot of quarters. Ahead we see some cows by the cemetery. Have a bunch of birds and cows.